Your government just threatened to annex Greenland while 646 people bled out in Iranian streets, and somehow, you're paying for both. You didn't vote for it. You didn't sign off on it. But check your gas price. Check your grocery bill. Check where your tax dollars went last quarter. You're funding the collapse. And here's the part that should make you furious. Trump says Iran wants to negotiate. Iran says they're prepared for war. But neither side is talking to you, the person who's about to eat the cost when this thing detonates. So let me ask you something. How much of your paycheck are you willing to lose before you start asking what the hell is actually happening? Let's do the math you won't see on cable news. Iran's regime is broke. Sanctions have gutted their economy. Oil exports crippled. Currency collapsing. The rial is worth less than the paper it's printed on. The Islamic Republic is surviving on smuggling, proxy militias, and the hope that Russia and China will keep them alive. Now flip the board. Trump just put the US military on alert. Not as a bluff, this is leverage architecture. He's not invading. He's making Tehran choose between internal collapse and external humiliation. The protests aren't organic, they're weaponized instability. And the US doesn't need to fire a shot if the Iranian people do it for them. But here's where it gets expensive for you. Every day this drags on, oil markets price and war risk. Brent crude spikes, gas prices follow. Your grocery bill climbs because everything moves on diesel. Meanwhile, defense contractors are licking their chops. Raytheon, Lockheed, Northrop, they win whether we go to war or just threaten it. You're funding the war machine and eating the inflation. So when Trump says Iran wants to negotiate, ask yourself, negotiate what? A face-saving surrender? A nuclear freeze? Or just enough time to regroup while you pay $5 a gallon? Look, if you're still watching, you're already ahead of 90% of people who have no idea what's coming. Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications. Because when oil spikes, when your grocery bill doubles, when this thing explodes, you're not going to hear about it from CNN until it's too late. And here's the thing, this video gets worse. The Iran protests? That's just the spark. Stay until the end, because what I'm about to show you connects Greenland, Europe, China, and your bank account in ways you didn't see coming. Now let's talk about why the US won't let Iran collapse cleanly and why that's a problem for you. Here's my position, and I don't care if it pisses people off. The Iranian regime is finished. Not tomorrow. Maybe not this year. But the legitimacy is gone. When 600 people die in the streets and the government's response is, "We're prepared," that's not strength, that's denial before the fall. But, and this is the part nobody wants to admit, the US is not going to let Iran collapse cleanly. Why? Because chaos in Iran means chaos in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen. It means Hezbollah goes rogue. It means ISIS 3.0. It means a nuclear program with no one at the wheel. And worst of all, it means Russia and China move in to pick up the pieces. Trump knows this. That's why he's dangling talks. Not because he loves diplomacy, because he wants to control the collapse. He wants a deal that keeps the oil flowing, keeps the proxies in check, and keeps Beijing and Moscow out. But here's the problem. Iran's government can't take that deal without admitting defeat, and Trump can't back down without looking weak. So we're in a collision course dressed up as negotiation. And the second one side miscalculates? You're looking at strikes on refineries, Hormuz blockades, and $150 oil. Now let's zoom out, because this isn't just about Iran, Greenland. You think that's a separate story? It's not. Trump is threatening to annex Greenland while simultaneously squeezing Iran. Why? Because he's consolidating US leverage before the next global realignment. Greenland controls Arctic shipping lanes. Iran controls Middle East oil corridors. Trump is making moves on both because he knows the next 10 years are about who controls the chokepoints. China is watching. Russia is watching. And they're making their own moves. If the US locks down Greenland and destabilizes Iran, Beijing loses access to cheap Persian Gulf oil and Moscow loses a proxy ally. But if Trump fails, if Iran collapses into chaos and Greenland tells the US to back off, then we lose the map. And here's the part that should terrify you. Europe is stuck in the middle. Denmark is freaking out over Greenland. European nations are watching Iran protests and calculating their own refugee exposure. If Tehran falls, you're looking at another migration wave Syrian crisis on steroids. If Trump cuts a deal with Iran, Europe gets sidelined again. So what does Europe do? Nothing. They can't. They don't have the military, the energy independence, or the political will. They're just along for the ride while Washington and Beijing play Risk. Meanwhile, your alliances are fracturing. NATO is already shaky. If Trump strong-arms Denmark over Greenland while Europe depends on US security guarantees in the face of Russia, what does that say? It says the US treats allies like assets to be leveraged, not partners. And when that trust breaks, you get Europe making side deals with China. You get Middle Eastern countries hedging with Russia. You get a multipolar free-for-all where the US doesn't get to set the rules anymore. So let me ask you directly, do you think Trump is bluffing on Iran? Because the Iranians don't. They've seen him assassinate Soleimani. They've seen him rip up treaties. They know he'll pull the trigger if it wins him points. Do you think the protests in Iran are just about freedom? Or do you think maybe there's CIA money, MI6 networks, and Mossad intelligence greasing the wheels? And here's the big one. What happens to your life if this goes sideways? If oil hits $150, your commute costs double. Your heating bill triples. Inflation comes roaring back. The Fed hikes rates. Your mortgage gets more expensive. Your job market tightens. And all because two governments couldn't figure out how to de-escalate. You think you're insulated because you don't live in Tehran or nuke. You're not. Every global chokepoint crisis becomes a domestic economic crisis. The only question is how fast it hits your bank account. And one more. Do you trust Trump to manage a three-front power competition against Iran, China, and Russia simultaneously while also trying to redraw Arctic borders? Because that's what's happening right now, while you're watching this video. There's an unresolved threat hanging over us, and it's got everyone on edge. Here's where we are. Iran is on fire. Trump is squeezing. The regime says they're prepared, but they're not. They're stalling. And the US is betting that internal collapse happens before external war becomes necessary. But betting isn't the same as controlling. If Trump miscalculates, we're in a shooting war. If Iran miscalculates, there's Somalia with nukes. If Europe fractures, NATO dies. If China and Russia move in, the whole game resets. And Greenland? That's not a sideshow, that's the Arctic endgame beginning while everyone's distracted by the Middle East. So no, I'm not giving you a neat conclusion. I'm not telling you, here's what will happen. Because nobody knows. Not Trump, not Tehran, not Beijing. What I'm telling you is this. The next 6 months will determine whether the US stays the global hegemon or whether we're entering a new era where power is split. Alliances are transactional, and every crisis becomes a bidding war. And you're going to pay for it either way, so maybe start paying attention. 646 dead. Greenland threatened. Oil spiking, and you're still not worried? Drop a comment. Tell me I'm wrong, I'll wait.